Dave, I think about you, and I know that Elmhurst is definitely, you weren't brought up in Elmhurst, but when you I guess when you stumbled across this upon this town, this city, obviously you and your family, you and Sonia, picked up and moved. To be honest, when I see that, I'm like, wow, that's really rare for people to move into the most diverse city in the world, right? 11373. Like our combination of zip codes here forms the most diverse place in the world. Our apartments aren't very big. We're not like we don't have like trees and much trees and grass and stuff like that. So oftentimes I do feel parents move east. They move out because and I always hear this. Again, nothing wrong with it, but I want to move out where there's a better school district or there's bigger land and, where people will not hurt me. How would you address that, Dave, when it comes to like Christian parents and community? Because obviously we're talking about community here.
Yeah.
How would you address that? And I guess I would ask you like, why did you move here?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. As you were talking, I'm like thinking to myself, yeah, why did I move here? Because I'm like an introvert of introverts, and I really like to be alone. I like fishing. I like wide open spaces. All of that is out east in Long Island. I spend so much time fishing on the island. And why did I move to Elmhurst? I think I'm reminded that not all introverts are just thinking to be alone or like in wide open spaces. I think what we care about is there's like meaning to what we do, and like we see it. It's not unexpected. I think what flusters us is when we don't know what we're looking at. But when I looked at Elmhurst, I knew what I was looking at. I saw a community that it just felt thick. It felt real, and I wanted my life to be a part of that. I wanted our family to be a part of that. And so that was more important to me than, time spent out east, like having a lawn or, like that to me wasn't as important. What was important for me was that we would be in a place where community would really be at the forefront of our lives, that our children would grow up in that. That was like really important for me. I mean, I did spend some time growing up on the island and as a teen, and it was so lonely. It was so lonely growing up on the island. Lawns are overrated. Sorry, they are. I had a large backyard. I had a front lawn, and so overrated. Yeah. Like, how much time do you actually spend on your lawn? Like the things that we cherish is the time spent with people, doing things with them. And you get to do that with such diversity in a city that has so many nations gathered in Elmhurst. And despite all of that diversity, there's this thick sense of neighborhood here. So it was an easy move for us, actually. Moving to Elmhurst was very easy. As soon as I saw what I was getting into, I saw community, and it was like so palpable.
Yeah. I think it's just really cool that your family is able to serve and live in the same neighborhood. I feel like when we do ministry with parents who live further out and they attend their church here, again, there's nothing wrong with that. It is just harder though to know what's happening where you're serving. Where like if Elmhurst is dealing with a lot of, let's say lack of vaccinations, and you're living really far away, well, I personally cannot depend on you because we live here. I need to grab the closest person who can walk to the closest library to talk about how to set up a site there, or even help the local, undocumented immigrants with tax issues. I can't wait for you to drive like an hour away to come here. And also, I do feel that the further you are, the less you feel the vibrations of of Elmhurst, of where you're serving. So I do feel like living close to the community where your brothers and sisters live and where they're serving is so helpful because we're called to seek the well-being of our city, right? Like that's our calling, is to seek the well-being of our city. What does that look like? Like, does it mean that you live 2 hours away? Or does it mean that you maybe live within the 1 mile radius, 2 mile radius, 3 mile radius? Like, what does that look like? Are you accessible by train? Like, are you able to get here within 15 minutes if you're driving? All that really plays a factor, right? Like knowing your local, deli owner, or your sandwich shop people, whatever it is, so important here. Or else you don't feel the vibrations of the city that you're supposed to be working in and seeking the well-being of.
Yeah, I mean, when we were starting this thing, before we had moved, the commute to Elmhurst was less than 20 minutes on a Sunday. So if the only consideration I had was, how long does it take me to get to Elmhurst by car, probably we would not have moved. But it's like, you're right, like I love that. Like that's what it was. It's not about how long it takes me to get to the neighborhood. It's how long and how accessible am I to the people that I love. And people who don't have cars, like so many people in Elmhurst don't have cars. We have like great transportation here, or could be better, but sure. But we have subways, buses here, and a lot of people just depend on that. If they tried to reach me by bus and by subway, it would take like 3 transfers. And like that realization was like very key. Yeah. It's keeping, like being mindful of that two-way street. It's not just how long does it take me to get there, but how will they reach me, And I think that proximity is so important, not just for pastors, but for just the people in that community to be nearby. And with parenting, so many of the emergencies that we experience, they are true emergencies. Like you can't hop in a car and drive an hour.
I think another thing that I think of when it comes to like parents is that the same thing, also maybe a little bit like marriage, which is I cannot penetrate that, right? Like I don't know how to break into that community. You have your spouse and your children, and that automatically becomes a community. And of course, I think I sometimes, I don't get it often, but sometimes they'll be like, well, like, how would you help us? You're not a parent, you don't understand. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I could help. What are you talking about? I can't pick up your kid when they're fall or they're crying. Like, why do I need to be a parent to know that, So I don't understand, but I do feel like that's also hard, again, for me as an outsider, looking in, because I'm like, well, how do I break into that? And I'm always hoping that, like how would parents, I don't know, like be more open with their lives, to those who are not parents, or even to other parents. Like we often hear like, oh, like it's so hard as a parent. That's all I hear actually. It's really hard. And I was like, I get it. I mean, I can't imagine, right? Like, but also, then how do we help fix that? Like how do you talk to someone like Sandy who has a lot of resources and can help your kids and teach your children actually throughout the week? How can, like we help you, or how can we not help you, but how do we do life with you so things are not as hard? I think of even something like coming to church on Sundays. I can't make it on Sunday because my kid's acting up. And I'm like, I don't understand what that looks like. But I have seen people with 6 children pack up their kids and go to church on time. Like you were in Indonesia, Sandy, and like, the pastor you're working with has 4 children, and he pastored that church always on time, right? Like, are there really hard children to deal with? I'm not debunking that, but I am saying, are there ways that, that maybe we can help with? Are there ways that even like you can be a part of the community by doing certain things, to be part of, let's say, even a simple thing like Sunday service? Our services are an hour. I mean, like we're asking for an hour for you to give it to God, like please. And I'm being very honest, because my heart hurts when I see parents who cannot go to church because their excuse sometimes, and I'm going to call an excuse, is that I cannot go because my child is very difficult. And I'm like, well, one, I would like to remind you that your child is given to you as a gift by God. Like to use that as a, like kind of a, like a collateral against God. It's that a collateral, like as a thing against God? Like, oh, I can't do this because you gave me a child and I can't go to church now. It's really offensive. Like, I can't imagine what God is feeling sometimes. I don't know. How do you guys feel about that? Any thoughts about it? What have you seen? And I know I might have been a little bit abrasive there, but whatever. It happens, and this is what I deal with. So,
but I mean, that's something to think about, right? I mean, so many of us parents have prayed to God for our kid. And then once the kid arrives, it's like, all right, well, less time with God. That's like weird. I remember someone saying like, you don't gift shoes to someone because they will wear it as they walk away from you.
That's
I
good.
just heard this yesterday.
Is that a thing?
That's really good.
Yeah, like you don't,
Cross-cultural.
maybe it is. Like you don't gift someone shoes because they will wear it as they leave your life. And it's like, that's kind of what we're talking about here. It's like, well, then why would God gift you with a child if you're going to use it as like a thing to like walk away from him with? You know, like why is that like the mindset to like say, oh, well, thank you God for this gift. Now I'm going to leave you out of my life.
Yeah.
You know, like it shouldn't have been that way. But perhaps maybe that's more to like what Sandy's point is, that we have these false expectations of this perfectly comely family life. And we are so afraid of that being dashed to pieces that we won't show up on Sunday because we're like, my child will make me look like an ineffective parent, or my child will like really make me feel like shameful, or like I don't have it all together. Like I left my career for this child. You know, like I left this chance to like have like the well put together life. My child is not going to give me the deficit of like having a life that looks messy. And so maybe in that moment we'll think, I definitely don't want to show up if my child is this way. But in reality, it's the expectation that our child is all put together. Like it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah.
And just so you know, like if you guys saw while Sandy was talking, like I was like smirking because the loudest child at the Elm on Sundays is my child.
No, it is not.
It is absolutely true. My two girls are the loudest. So if you're considering coming to the Elm, I don't know which camera I'm supposed to look at. That one? Yeah, okay. If you're thinking about coming to the Elm and you're worried about your child being loud, believe me, my child is going to outdo your child.
It's okay. I'll take them onto the praise team. I'm excited that they're loud.
Yeah. Like, that's okay.
Yeah.
Children are children. You know, children are children. I know Sandy puts a lot of thought into the kind of community she forms so that parents feel safe dropping off their kids or like putting their kids in this community. And that's like so important that church communities are thinking that. Like you can't just tell parents to trust the community with your kids because that's usually not a trustworthy community. Trust me. Why? You know, like show me that you're thinking with safety in mind. Show me that you're thinking with my children in mind. Like what are some ways in which the community demonstrates its health for the sake of parents and children? Because I know you put a lot of thought into that. So I think that would be also a really helpful thing to hear.
Throughout the week, I try to invest as much time as I can to talk to parents or to welcome them to ask me questions or to bring their children over, then we can spend time together. I think that is really the best and most effective way to build that trust, to see how we are when cameras aren't rolling or when I'm not teaching. How do I respond to children? How do I treat children who are misbehaving or just being naughty or something like that? To see me in my true form and to be able to interact with the children in a way that is uplifting. I think it's important for the community to see each other do that, not just me as a children's ministry director, but when parents and children spend time with others, those with children, those who are parents, or those who are single, those who are married with no children, just anybody else in the community, to be able to have those interactions can build that trust that we need in a healthy community. And I do something called Continue Learning at Home, where I send out videos and links and resources of what parents can do throughout the week, what songs they can sing, which books they can read to supplement the lesson that we learned on Sunday. And I always try my best to emphasize, if you have questions or if you need me to walk alongside you to get through this activity or this discussion with your child, please do contact me. But I feel like I tag it on so much that I'm like a broken record. But I really do mean to have that interaction with me. Trust me enough to even start a conversation about something that might be difficult for you or that might be easy for you, or maybe some feedback or something that you feel that you're strong in, one of your strengths, to share that with me so that I can do it better. And I think that's the only way that we can grow and to combine our strengths for the betterment of our children and for the future of this church or the future of this community. Because we are all trying our best to raise up children who fear the Lord, who are respectful to others, who know how to share, who know how to offer what's theirs and be able to sacrifice something that they love so that others can benefit and be happy about. These are all things that we aim for. But the only way to do that, to raise this group of children together, is by having more interactions with each other where we can be candid, where it's just our natural self. I think that's the best way for the children to catch on to what does it look like to be respectful. I think we spoke about it earlier about how parents, when they're in community with others, they're able to model that kind of behavior for their children. If children only see their parents interact with each other, like, I am not so confident about that, like what the children are absorbing 24/7. If all they see, especially during this past year in the pandemic, where everybody's just home all day long, where all they see is their parents interacting with each other. And in my head, it's like, there's probably a lot of arguments. There's probably a lot of raised voices. I mean, that's inevitable. That happens in every household. But if that's all the children see, we have a problem. Right. They need to be able to see how their parents invite others in. And hopefully it's less likely to just be, raised voices and fights and disputes. But how are they offering their water to somebody? Like, would you like something to drink? Can I make something for you? Or to have that kind of everyday interaction for the children to see. We always, in the education field, we always say children are like sponges. They absorb everything. Even when you don't want them to absorb it, they will come back to you and repeat whatever you said back to you like a parrot. And so if that's all they see, their mom and dad and those interactions, that's all they see, it's going to be really hard for them to interact with the outside world where, parents can't be there to protect them anymore. That's a real concern where, the parents are letting them go into, kindergarten, like they're not in our care anymore. They're with their teacher. How are they listening to their teacher? How are they being kind to others and sharing space with others? The parents aren't able to watch them like a hawk anymore. They're on their own, really. And does that make you scared as a parent, or do you feel confident about that and letting your child be them, wholeheartedly them, unapologetically them?
Yeah. I mean, some of the things that you brought up there in terms of building trust with parents, it's true. Like, I think you went to every single parent's home, the ones that would, gladly invite you in to spend time with their kids in front of them. I think as a parent, seeing how willing you are to build that relationship with the whole family encourages trust. But we also have that rotation for parents to sit in as a parent volunteer. And so they get to see your lesson as a parent. They get to see what the children are learning or what the structure is like. That's really important because as a parent, you're not just dropping off your kids to someone you don't know what they're doing with your kids. Like you can be a volunteer that sits in and watch that and see that in action. Like everything that you do encourages trust from the parents so that they can drop their kids off. And even like photos. I know that, you're really good about making sure that people aren't taking random photos of random kids, like that's an important thing. Like how can we build a community that is safe, even for our children, in order to develop them, if we're not advocating for their safety and building trust intentionally. I feel like that was such a big part of what you do. And church communities have to be thinking about how do you earn trust so that you can have them get plugged in, you know? And
thank you so much for joining us for this this session on parenting and the community. Obviously, this is our experiences with what we've been seeing in ministry, and that's why we would love for you to talk about this with your churches. This conversation has to go, it has to start. We've always been thinking about and reading things about community, this fluffy word community and what it looks like. But as we live through it and as we live in it, there's obviously a lot of false expectations and myths that we have now experienced. So we would really love to have this conversation with you. Please join us on our next one. Please, like all these, whatever the Facebook stuff, I don't understand. It's all over the place. It's on our website, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. Please comment and let us know your thoughts. We'd love to know what your church has come up with as well. Our next one's going to be on singleness and the community. Tune in then.